Okay, it's working. Hey guys, I'm entering my my negativity era, and I'm gonna start complaining to you about things. I can't. You know, I've struggled making a second episode of this, whatever we're calling it now. Because I'm a hater at heart, and every time I try to be positive, the hate just spills out of me, like, you know. So we're gonna talk about something that I've noticed recently, which is that every single art tutorial is like clickbait nowadays. In the past, and by in the past I mean when I was growing up, you know, art tutorials, they would be quite straightforward, you know. It'd be like how to draw hair, how to paint with oil colors, how to draw a boy, anime boy, or something like that. But now, suddenly, the tutorials are like how to draw like XYZ, how to draw like this famous Japanese illustrator from Pixiv, and you're like, wow, I would love to be able to draw like that famous illustrator from Pixiv. You click on it, it's not the illustrator, it's just some random guy. I think I got spoiled, you know, because I'm used to Proco tutorials where they're like, hey, you want to know how this famous illustrator draws? And you're like, oh my god, of course. And then you click on it and it's the guy, it's the famous illustrator in the video explaining how he does the things that he does. But then, you know, I started seeing these videos and they're like, this is how he does his thing. And you're like, oh my god, how does he do his thing? You click on it and it's not the him. It's not the him in question. It's a different him, a different guy entirely. I feel like some videos are more honest about this. They're like, hey, this is an art style study of insert famous Japanese illustrator. I'm like, okay, you know, you at least you're straightforward with it. You're like, this is how I think he did it because I studied his art style, which, you know, I still think it's a bit weird that, you know, we've moved on from this is how to draw bodies and stuff, and hair and whatever, to this is how some random guy who's famous draws, and I'm gonna explain it to you even though I'm not this random guy. And then obviously when I would see these social tutorials, I get a bit annoyed, but I'd go to the comments and people would be like, oh my god, this was so helpful. So I'd be like, maybe I'm just being the old guy on the porch with a stick swinging, being like, the damn youths, those dang kids, at it again with their weird art tutorials, and I don't understand it. But you know, then I was like, well, you know what? If they want better art tutorials, then they'll just maybe this is for a particular audience, and if they want to watch better tutorials, they'll probably do it. But then I thought about me, the reason why I watch good art tutorials is because I know where to look for them. But when it comes to things that I'm not super experienced in, like, I don't know, sports, super random example, I don't know what a good sports tutorial is. I remember years ago, I used to, like, I at a certain point started watching videos because I used to do push-ups. Yeah, I know, it's pretty impressive. But at a certain point I watched a video that was like, if you're doing push-ups like this, and it was demonstrating the way that I used to do push-up, then you're doing them wrong. And I was like, I know. And he showed the correct way of doing push-up, and I was like, oh god, I've been doing them wrong this whole time. And then I tried this new way, and I was really, really bad at it. And I was so bad, in fact, that I just quit doing push-ups altogether, which maybe that reflects badly on my character, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And then I remember I went months later, I got my hand injury, and I went to the physio, and I was like, yeah, you know, I used to do push-ups, but I did them badly, so I quit. And she's like, okay, what did you do them like? I was like, I did them like this, and I showed her. She was like, that's fine. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you know, there's a bunch of different ways to do push-ups, but the way that you were doing push-ups isn't bad. It's just not like, it's targeting these muscles instead of these, but it's fine actually, like, you're doing fine. And I was like, so I've been lied to? So I quit push-ups for no reason? So I could have been way better at push-ups now if I didn't take this massive break? And this personal anecdote kind of put me back to reality. I was like, no, I need to clarify that I don't think these tutorials are really great. I don't think that any of these creators mean badly. I don't think they're trying to clickbait people. I think actually, in fact, this is not their fault necessarily. This is YouTube's fault, because I think what you're seeing is sort of survivorship bias. Like, yeah, okay, these creators could not do this form of clickbait, but the reason why you're seeing this is not because, you know, these particular creators are evil and they made this clickbait. It's because this type of clickbait is the sort of stuff that gets on the front page. I feel like sometimes, you know, the hate mobs that the internet creates when it comes to these particular situations are unproductive and sort of annoying. And also, I don't like attacking the small guy. I like attacking the tall guy, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they're so wrong. They're so wrong all the time. On the other hand, you know, I'm like, oh, they don't mean bad. They probably have the best intentions in mind. I just saw a video. The thumbnail was art that was not from the person who uploaded the video. I click on it. It's about brushes. It's a speed paint from some random guy, well, not a random guy, it's like a famous illustrator guy. And it's talking about like brushes that you should use as a beginner. And it's not your video. It's somebody else's speed paint. That is just disingenuous. How can you use somebody else's speed paint to talk about what brushes you should use as a beginner? And the cherry on top, going to the description, he's selling brushes with other people's art in the advertisements for the brushes. That's disingenuous. That's false advertisement, my guy. So, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, it's probably a bunch of teens, early 20s people. They don't have bad intentions. But on the other hand, when you see stuff like that, I find that a bit pricky. I find that a bit slimy. I don't think that's very nice. You should stop doing that. Like, is it really that ridiculous to expect a video with someone else's art in the thumbnail to be from the person who made that art? Like, when did it become acceptable that we just use random illustrators' art and like kind of insinuate that you're going to be able to draw like them when you click on that video, and then it's just some random nobody? And look, I'm not saying random nobody because they don't have a lot of followers. I'm saying the random nobody because they don't draw like the illustrators that they use to advertise the videos. And I feel like if you're not at the same level as these illustrators, it's a bit disingenuous to advertise your own tutorials with their work. It's a bit slimy. It's a bit slimy. And obviously, there's gradations in this, because I paid for a course once from Arrucelli. I don't think that's how you pronounce her name, but I like saying it that way. And it was good. And sometimes, she would use other people's work as example. But it's important to note that 99% of the drawings in that course were hers. But all of the drawing demonstrations were hers. And sometimes she'd give like an example. She'd be like, oh, some people like to do line art in this way. And then she'd pull up a drawing from some other artist. I thought that was fine. So it's a bit hard, I can imagine someone's being like, well, where do you draw the line? I don't know. If the entire video is somebody else's speed paint, I think you could draw the line there. If the whole video is based on some other artist, I think you could draw the line there. If you yourself are not at a professional level, feel like substantiating your own claims with like 99% of other people's work, I feel like you could draw the line there. Probably a bit of a fuzzy line, but I think you could probably find a line nonetheless. Fuzzy line is still a line. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. Like, I'm pretty sure I probably used an image I don't own in a video as an example, and I feel like that's fine, but we're going a bit overboard. If you're showing somebody else's speed paint and you're using somebody else's art in the thumbnail, is it really even your tutorial? Like, why does this happen? What is up with all these? I guess maybe it's also just the evolution of YouTube in general. There's so many videos right now where it's like, oh, it's commentary. It's a video that you stole from TikTok and then you uploaded it onto YouTube with an AI voice narrating what's happening. And I'm very scared that that's gonna happen to art content, because I don't think that's good. I don't think those are good tutorials. I don't think you narrating over the speed paint of another person constitute good informative work. I don't think so. Another part that irks me a bit about this is that these videos always kind of seem to imply that they discovered something super new and secret. Quite often, tell me if you've seen this before, but there's like a video, it's like the secret technique that all these pro artists use, and it's like, was it a secret or was it just perspective and like just like basic things that people have? Like, why do you call it a secret? Is it really a secret? Did they keep this from you? Did they have like their little secret Illuminati style gatherings where they share each other's art secrets, or are you lying? And half the time they'll just explain a basic concept like color theory or perspective or whatever, and they'll be like, see, this is secret technique. It's not a secret technique, but then more egregious, they'll give it a new name. They will never be like, oh, this is simplifying shapes into easy to understand things. No, they'll be like, this is the secret rule of triangles. Whoa. And it's like, never heard of that before, wonder what that is. Oh, it's just shape language. Oh, okay. Rebranding, I guess. But why would you try to fix something if it's not broken? Why don't you just use the traditional name? And like, I get that sometimes people don't really get the name for the thing that they're saying. Obviously, sometimes people discover something themselves. They're like, whoa, look at this new thing I discovered, and it turns out that it's actually a well-established concept. I have no problem with that. I think that's just inevitable when you're young, that you'll find something and you think that you've discovered it, but it's actually something that's been around for a while. But I don't like just completely obfuscating these names, because it makes it less easy for people to find more information about these concepts. Like, if I were to rebrand perspective as a secret 3D life art hack, and I look up secret 3D life 3D life art hack on Google, I'm not going to find more about that subject. But if I look up 2-point perspective, I might find a tutorial. If I don't understand the initial tutorial, I can find another tutorial talking about the same subject because they're talking about the same subject, but because the weird clickbaity one gave it a new name, now it's kind of disemboweled. I keep saying disemboweled. It's kind of separated from all of these many years of history that these art concepts have, and that's useful, you know. If you know the legitimate term for some type of practice, you could research that, you know. If I were to suddenly start calling occlusion shadows really dark bits, then I might have a hard time googling that, you know. Like that's just what I mean. And then because sometimes they reinvent the wheel, they'll reinvent it completely wrong. They'll be like, look, I made this new thing, I call it a roundy thingamajig, and instead of a beautiful round wheel that's perfect, it's like a little wheel that has like a dent in it, and they're like, yeah, that dent is there on purpose, and you're like, no, it would be way better if it's just a regular wheel. But because they're not super informed about the subject that they're talking about, they'll do that. Obviously the wheel example is a bit strange, but what I mean to say is that sometimes people will discover, you know, an old concept like, I don't know, color theory, perspective. I keep hammering on perspective because it's my favorite, or anatomy or whatever, and they'll say it and then they'll explain how they do it, but they have a really strange way of doing it that's not as useful because they're not super experienced again. And so then what happens is that they'll do this study of this artist and they'll come to this really strange conclusion. They'll be like, this is their secret. What I find very telling about it is that quite often they'll say like, oh, this is their secret, here's my drawing trying to imitate this art style, and the main key components, like the really telltale signs of that art style, are not prevalent in their final work. And you know, if you do a study and then you end up with work that doesn't really resemble the work that you're trying to imitate, can you really say that you've discovered their secrets? I don't think you can. But you know, of course, you can't really make a weekly upload schedule if you need to actually figure out someone's secret technique completely and accurately before you can upload a video. Usually these people only draw one piece, and it's gonna take a little bit more than one piece to figure out somebody's super secret secret. It's gonna take a little bit more than that. Like recently I did some work and I was like, I want to get the same effect as Jone Yamamai. Maybe it's because I've been looking up recently that this has started to annoy me that I saw these videos. But I did that with that Rin drawing I did where she's crying her eyes out. Yeah, and I was like, I want to emulate her style a bit. I think it looks a little bit similar in certain ways, you know, like the colors and stuff. But of course in other ways it's completely dissimilar. Jone Yamamai has these extreme distortions of like you know, it's very close. It's a very, I don't know how we'd call this kind of lens, but you know how she does the perspective. She does these extreme perspective shots with these close-up of these anime girls' faces, and they look really nice. And with mine, that's completely not present. I didn't do that. I didn't manage to do that. Now I could be disingenuous and make a complete video that's like, I figured out the secret life hack, but that wouldn't be true because I didn't figure out the secret life hack of Jone Yamamai's art. I failed. Now, obviously, as an art study, I didn't fail. I learned from this, and I proved my art. But as a YouTube video that's claiming that you know, dissected somebody's style and you figured out the secret technique, I feel like that would be a fail. But Annabelle, how can you expect these people to upload regularly while they're still trying to figure out how to do this correctly? And the answer is, I don't expect them to do that, but I don't get why you would make videos that are inaccurate just because that's the only way that you can put out videos regularly. I don't think that's a good argument. The blind leading the other blind, in the damned leading the you know that one Christian story where it's like a blind guy and he's leading a bunch of other blind guys and they're all falling into a pit or something because they're blind? That's what it feels like to me. I think that studying other people's art is really great and you should probably do it, but when you publish that online as a sort of quasi-tutorial of sorts, you run the risk of teaching other people things that aren't super correct and that can be harmful. You know, I say harmful, it's not really harmful, you're not going to die if you shade incorrectly, but it can stunt you a bit creatively, you know. There was an author online a couple of years ago who I followed because you know, when you look up tutorials for making comics, they very rarely talk about the writing process. I was like, I gotta learn about that, so I watched her tutorials, and you know, she sounded very confident, and she gave good advice is what I thought, because I didn't know anything about writing. But then years later her book came out, and apparently I haven't read it, so you know, this is just what I've heard other people say. It wasn't super great, and it definitely wasn't good enough that she should have been making those tutorials. And I can't even blame her for it, because when you're trying to do something artistically or whatever, you're encouraged to make a social media presence. And how do you do that? Well, you make tutorials, even if you are not actually in a position where you probably shouldn't be making them. Maybe you're not experienced enough to make them, which is fine, you know? You can make videos about your experience with art and what it's like to create, and that's all fine. But I feel like, you know, not to be a gatekeeper, I feel like you need to know a little bit more about art in order to make a tutorial. And yet, at the same time, as I'm saying that, I know that when I was starting out and I was like 12, people would be like, how do you draw this thing? So I'd make a little tutorial because people asked me. So I'm not angry at these people for doing that. At the same time, I think we need to acknowledge that in order to make tutorials, you need to actually know what you're doing quite well. You know, and with drawing, when I see a video that explains it badly, I'm able to distinguish that because I'm pretty experienced. I have a little bit of experience under my belt. But with writing, I wasn't experienced, and so the confidence of this writer lady made me believe that what she said was completely correct, and that was bad, not just because it might not have been correct, but because she would, and this is something that I've seen a lot with people who are not super experienced in art, is they'll make these super definitive statements about do's and don'ts, and it's like, you were lacking a bit of nuance there, my guy. I remember I saw this tutorial video from someone, and they said that you shouldn't mix your own colors, like you shouldn't try to get the precise colors for your shadows because pro artists just use multiply. What? Huh? And I was so confused because there's a bit of truth there. There's a bunch of experienced artists who do their shading and highlights by using blending modes. I completely forgot the name there. But there's also other artists who don't do this, like me. I pick most of my shading, and you know what I sometimes do? Sometimes I'll do my shading with a multiply layer, and I don't like the color it gives me, and then I hand pick the color that the shading's gonna be, because the multiply layer didn't work. Sometimes I'll do it over the whole drawing, and I like the multiply layer on most of it, but then there's certain shadows that I don't think turn out that well with this standard multiply layer, so I hand pick those colors, you know? But this idea that like 90% of pro artists just use like multiply or blending modes to make their shading, and then saying that with such confidence. I know that if I was a little 12-year-old watching that, I'd believe him. I'd be like, I guess I don't need to hand pick colors. I guess I could just use a bunch of blending modes. And I think, you know, it was the same with this writer lady. She'd be like, you should always plot out your novels. You should never be a pantser. And then, you know, I was like, I guess you should always do that. You should always plot out your stuff. And I remember at a certain point they started interacting with writers more. They're like, no, it's more of a personal preference, and you know, if it works for you, then you should do that, and if it doesn't work for you, then you shouldn't do that. And if you don't plot out your entire book, the writing police is not gonna catch you in the street and send you to jail. So just do whatever feels good and whatever works for you. And I've noticed that especially with beginner or intermediate artists, they're really fond of making these super black and white claims that are like, if you do this, then your drawing will be garbage, and if you do this, then you're doing it basically how the pros are doing it, because basically the pros all work the same apparently. If you were to believe these tutorials, then you probably believe that. The thing with people who are not super experienced is that they might not even make a tutorial that's that bad, but they will most definitely be missing some nuance in their tutorials. Like for example, when we're talking about how pro artists do this, there's so many bloody pro artists out there, so many professional artists, there's so many different ways that professional artists work, and then of course, you know, the difference between what these professionals specialize in also reflects in their work progress. Like someone would be like, yeah, concept artists, they all use photo bashing. It's like, probably some of them, like there's probably a big chunk of them that do, but I've also met a lot of artists who are like, yeah, I never photo bash, I never do that, never done that, and I don't need to because of whatever reason. These super definitive statements are the ones that bother me the most. I get a lot of people, they ask me to make tutorials, and I don't really want to make tutorials, namely because I don't feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm good enough to make tutorials on things. I don't think that I know most things well enough in art to make tutorials. Some people might call this imposter syndrome. I don't call it that. I call it knowing your own ability. I will say, I think I could make like a fundamentals tutorial, but you know, other than that, I've had people ask me to make an anatomy tutorial. My guy, I'm not going to make an anatomy tutorial. I don't know that. Barely know anatomy myself. You know, if you want to learn anatomy, just watch Proco. Just watch Proco. And now that we're at this part, I can finally get to the conclusion. I don't want to call anyone out for doing these bad tutorials because I feel like that's unproductive. Also, a lot of them are teenagers, and I'm not going to be beefing with a minor. That's embarrassing. So instead of calling out people who do these bad tutorials, I'm going to shout out people who do experienced, well thought out tutorials. You know, Proco, I feel like a Proco plug now. They don't pay me, but I think they're quite nice. What I like about Proco is that they've got quite a lot, like they've got a lot of diversity. Like they actually get different illustrators on their YouTube channel, and they all, you know, they explain their process and stuff like that. That's what I like about it. And then, you know, for well, let me see, I got a little list here. That's the only thing I wrote down for this video. But yeah, Aaron Blaze, that's more for animation, I guess. Oh, that's pretty nice. Modern Day James, there's a bunch of tutorials. I think they're quite nice. I don't know if he still has his perspective tutorials up. I thought those were nice, but now he does like more animation stuff, which is okay, but really likes his early tutorials. And BAM Animation, if you're, I know that most of these are animation right now because I guess, you know, but part of the reason is that I don't really watch a lot of tutorials. I had a very traditional art education and went to a full-time art school, secondary school. That's where I learned to draw, so I never really watched a lot of tutorials. Some people ask me, they're like, how did you learn how to paint? And they expect a tutorial. Quite often they're disappointed because I didn't use a tutorial. When I felt stuck in my art and I wanted to improve and I wanted to learn how to render, I didn't watch a single tutorial. Instead, I looked up, I actually went to Google Translate and I looked up like speed paint but in Japanese, and then I looked that up on YouTube because it was hard to find. So that's how I did that, and that's how I learned how to render. That's how I did it. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a secret. The part of the reason why I don't like these videos the most is because I feel like, if you feel called out by this, I don't care. Some people like to watch videos of other people doing things, and then they get the satisfaction from those videos as though they've done that thing, even though they haven't really done that thing. I've spoken about this before, but you watching a video of someone else studying someone's art is not the same as studying someone's art. And if you really want to improve as an artist, instead of watching these videos that are like, here's how Yone Yamai does her colors, grab a bunch of speed paints from Yone Yamai and study those directly. It'll be far better for your artistic development than watching these videos that I don't like. And also watch Fine Art Academy because it's really good. And then of course, you know, go on to Pixiv directly. You know, there's a bunch of tutorials that are like, how do these Pixiv artists do their thing? Just go directly to Pixiv or Bilibili. I know that everyone's saying that Bilibili is like a really great place to find tutorials. Go directly on there. Go to the sword. Fight the sword. There's this secondhand nonsense. You know, it's reduce, reuse, recycle, but not for art tutorials. You know, so just watch those. They're really good. Then there's like James Gurney. Did I say before? Yeah, I bought a book from James Gurney recently. It was quite good. Color and Light for the Realist Painter, because my colors suck. It's kind of why I made this video, because I was looking for tutorials. I kept running into these and they bugged me. But I haven't really checked out his channel. I'm sure it'll be nice because he's really good. He's a really good painter. But Annabelle, I want to draw anime. I want to have tutorials on how to draw anime. Have you ever looked at my art? Does it look like I don't know how to draw anime? Like, the reason why I'm recommending these channels and why most of them teach you realism, because that was what my basis was, you know, believe it or not. When I was in secondary school, I learned how to draw in a realistic way, and that really improved my art, and that's why I'm able to draw cute anime girls now. It was by drawing bowls of fruit in secondary school. Realism will help you with your anime, so eat your vegetables, watch your realism tutorials, and then you can draw your anime girls on the side. Thank you. So yeah, I'm not sure if the video in the background will fit this subject, but you know. Anyway, let me know what you think. Am I just being a prick about it? Am I just an old man on my porch wiggling my cane around, being like, the damn youths of today, their tutorials, they're bad? Or do you think I have a point? Because I think I've got a point, and I would like to be validated in that. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too negative. Maybe I'll re-listen to it and be like, oh, I wasn't too negative. Or I'll be like, whoa, I sound like a hater. I think I'm a bit of a hater at heart. Unfortunately, got a lot of hate inside of me. I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm very good at being negative, unfortunately. Oh yeah, did you hear that I got a new microphone? Did you hear it? Did you hear the sound of my microphone? Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? Now I sound like a real podcast. I should probably take this microphone away from me. But yeah, speaking of, the next video is delayed because I want to re-record the audio because I got this new microphone. It sounds a lot nicer. It doesn't sound as tinny as before. I feel like my previous mic sounded quite tinny. kind of sounds like, you know, like that. I don't know if anyone gets what I'm saying. Oh, and I got an imprint account. A lot of people were asking me if I sold prints, and I do, but I only sell prints in person, like at conventions. But you know, I live in Belgium, so kind of hard to get those prints if you're not there. So I got an imprint account. And again, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh no, I love those tutorials, they make me feel so motivated to draw, then please disregard every single thing that I'm saying. I want you to know, I really want you to know, if these tutorials feel helpful and they give you that surge of inspiration that you need to get drawn every day, then everything I've said is nonsense, because the purpose of art tutorials is to teach you and to motivate you. And if they motivate you, you know, then they're doing half the job, and that's good enough for me. And I wouldn't want anyone to react the same way that I reacted to that guy when he said that my push-ups were bad. I don't want people to feel that way, because it's not productive, you know. So don't quit, is what I'm trying to say. Part of the reason why I dislike these videos is because I feel like sometimes they might prevent people from practicing well or practicing, period. And if a video encourages you to practice, that's probably just a good thing. I think people stress a lot about practicing art correctly and doing the right techniques and doing the right practice, and what if I don't optimize my drawing? And you know, if you're drawing, that's already a good thing. And if you're really focused on improvement, obviously check out the channels that I set before. But if you're scared that you're doing it wrong, then just do it wrong. It's healthier to do it wrong than to not do it at all. What I'm trying to say is, don't get discouraged to draw. You should probably be drawing. Healthiest thing for your artistic mind is to draw. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so sorry it took so long. It's partly because it's not my favorite thing in the world to do. I prefer drawing. Of course, I can't always be drawing because my hand is on fire most days. And not fire like good, like, oh, I'm on a roll. More like fire like crippling chronic pain. So yeah, but I like these because they don't take too much time to edit, and also some people have been asking me to upload longer speed paints, so you know, here they are. On the other hand, I don't know what to talk about in any of these videos ever, and it usually resorts to something super negative. So if you've got any particular subject that you want me to talk about, please drop it down below. I'm sick and tired of being a hater. It's not true, I'll be a hater until the day I die, but it would also be nice to have some joy in my life. So if you've got any subjects that you want me to talk about, anything that you want me to like address, I don't know, when I say address, it makes it sound like I got accusations against me or something. Drop it down below and tell me how good my microphone sounds, because it sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah, I agree. It sounds real nice. Best purchase of the year. Happy New Year. This is gonna be the last. Oh, I hope this does not get uploaded after New Year, because then that would be embarrassing. But Happy New Year to everyone. My good intentions for next year are to become able, and also to learn how to color. Yes, I'm bad at coloring, and I'll learn how to color, and I'll be able to. Also, I would like to get real big arms. I like really big. Like I get stopped in the airport because they're like, you can't take those guns on the plane. I'll be like, ha 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 ha. It would be great if that could happen. So yeah, see you next year. Yeah, there's something else I should say. But yeah, follow me on Instagram. Anyway, bye-bye. I'll see you next time in 2026. Dang, 2016 was 10 years ago. Can you believe it? I cannot. I refuse to. I'm a truth denier. I like made up stuff, and I hate facts. Bye-bye.